sometimes in business or sometimes in heart-based work or any sort of community building, it's easy to get stuck in the flood of everybody else telling you that you're doing something right, wrong, good, bad. And for me, that moment was, okay, is there an impact that this is having on humans that's positive? Because sometimes it's not positive. If it has an impact that's positive on people, it's okay to charge for it so you can get it to more people.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Beneri. Today I'm joined by Taryn Toomey, founder of The Class, a workout blending movement, sound, and mindfulness. In this episode, we talk about scaling the unique practice from an unnamed group workout to a global wellness platform. Plus, we discuss defying boundaries, navigating transitions, and fostering authentic connections. Let's get into it. The Fitt Insider Podcast is presented by EGYM. EGYM's smart fitness ecosystem is transforming healthcare through exercise. Combining strength equipment with AI-powered software and corporate wellness platform WellPass, it's leading the shift to proactive preventative health. Learn more about EGYM's intelligent workout solutions at egym.com. Hi, Taryn. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Joe. I am here.
We were just chatting offline briefly, and I said I think a lot of people will be familiar with your name and potentially the class, just that also brand. But I think it'd be maybe most interesting just what's kind of the current state of things. Maybe introduce yourself and set that context, and we'll jump into it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, my name is Taryn. People call me TT. I'm the founder of The Class. The Class has been around for almost 13 years now. I taught it for 2 years with no name and then gave it a name, The Class, in 2013, and have been really in the middle of building what it is since then, because it's constantly evolving and changing. And I stepped back into leadership about a year ago after being out for 2 years. So where we currently are, that can take the entire podcast because we're in the middle of huge transition, which to me, there's so much learning that happens in transition. But just to come back to the center, The Class is a mat-based workout where we exercise the body. We use repetition, sound, and breath. We often ask students to close their eyes to scan the inner world. And then the sound releases energy from the inside of the body out. And we use quiet spaces thread throughout class so people can connect to their heart. And then we end with heart opening, a little bit of breath work and meditation. So it's a cathartic workout. It will hit every single body part. It's cardiovascular, it's biometrics, it's all the different types of contraction and expansion done through a specific methodology. So the way that we place each move after the other has a very specific meaning to it and reason why, to bring somebody into a deeper space of connection to themselves.
All those things that you're talking about, and even 13 years in developing the methodology initially and not even having a name, you fast forward to the present day, it's like all of the things that everybody wants to talk about, that everybody's trying to create an experience or a workout or that connection, mind, body, and emotion, and low impact and mat based and all these things. What got you there initially, and how do you kind of think about that? Like, oh, I was kind of already there, and now it's just a matter of maybe aligning with how we operationalize that or how we scale that or what we want that to show up as in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question because I love your newsletter. Way before I was told that I was going to be on the podcast with you, I've always forwarded it to my friends and colleagues, and I love the way you write and how you summarize really what the trends are and then how people are connecting, collaborating, what the mental state of people is, the exhaustion about things, the excitement about things. And oftentimes when I open it, one of the reasons why I probably love it is because it really resonates with me. And I'm like, exactly what you said. Wow, we've been doing this for so long. Because The Class was not created to be a business and it has become a global platform now, there's definitely been a little bit of almost catching up with the ability to say we've been doing that without saying that, because that's not really part of how I operate. I really believe in show by doing. I have 2 girls and I always talk about role modeling. Don't tell them what to do, just be it. The world is definitely on to understanding that movement helps to regulate, and all of the different, I mentioned to you earlier, we could go into the whole system of what goes on in the class, or we can go into the whole business of it, but to keep on the tracks, it feels wonderful is what it feels like. Because when I first founded it and started teaching it, there was so much pushback, and there still is, about what are they doing? Or if you hear somebody try to describe the class, I hear a lot of people, you'll do burpees for 10 minutes and you'll cry. And you get one of two answers. That's absolutely not, or oh my God, I need that, right? So it's usually like a 50-50 split. And I have found that through all of business, even when we go out there to collect data around if the customer wants or the student wants the room warm or cool, or the teacher does or not, it's usually a 50-50 split. So what that's made me do is, of course, we use the data and we follow it. But I also have realized that when I connect into my intuition about strong feelings I have, not just an impulse around something, that if I do speak about it and thoughtfully bring it into the method, that it generally shows up later as being something that is valuable and that is a trend that's becoming more elevated. So it's only shown me through repetitions of a decade plus that when I do that, that something's happening, blazing a little bit of a trail, being okay with packaging it in a brand, which I think sometimes is a difficult thing when you talk about anything that has to do with spirituality or connection to oneness or heart, that if it's infused through anything that has an exchange of financial dollars, it's a really interesting thread to balance the keeping the container healthy and allowing the business to grow enough to bring the method to more people. And that's the thing that's always brought me back into the next step. Even before, when I was going to name it the class, I had started it almost for 2 years. I started a small group in a room in my building, and it grew from there. And every month we would send money to this woman who had passed away. Mama Kia was her name. Her children, they're now twice orphaned. And that was the heart of why I started it. I started it because I needed it in so many ways. And I was also in a space of grief, and I didn't feel enough awareness around what grief feels like and how to process it. And I didn't have enough places to go and find that. So in reflection, I created it for myself and by gathering community around, and then it struck a chord and started growing. And when I first went to give it a name and charge for it, I remember I talked to Mama Kia, who had left her body 2 years earlier, because I was really not well about the idea that I would charge for something that had such an exchange that didn't have to do with monetary or currency, right? There was a currency in it, but it was about helping people connect in their heart. And then when I heard her voice, and she said in her silly voice, "Oh, honey, you have to look at what you're doing." And it was this moment for me that I still remember the sound of her voice, because I think that sometimes in business or sometimes in heart-based work or any sort of community building, it's easy to get stuck in the flood of everybody else telling you that you're doing something right, wrong, good, bad. And for me, that moment was, okay, is there an impact that this is having on humans that's positive? Because sometimes it's not positive. Sometimes it has an impact that we always have to look at the kind of result of our behavior and learn. But if it has an impact that's positive on people, it's okay to charge for it so you can get it to more people. And that's where I've always come back to my center with that. It's a nuanced thing, and I think that it still lives in me every day. So the feeling of a lot of talk around somatic movement now, of understanding how to stabilize the mind and to release different to off-put different kinds of hormones and chemicals and all these different activations in the body. I love to study it, and I always have, but I don't explicitly talk about what's going on in the method. So we'll start by tapping the heels. So you get into the proprioceptive system, right, which helps the mind ground into the body. Then we start side-to-side movements, stabilizing the gaze on one point. So now we're left, right, side brain. Then you're squatting on the beat, down and up, closing the eyes. Then we bring sound in, and then you get quiet. What came up? What did you notice? How else could you think about it? Breathe. And then we move on to the next series. So there's this regulating method in it that I have found to be incredibly powerful for people because they have their own realization of how they are and who they are when they're alone with themselves. And I think if we can get people to start there, not about the validation from the external. I think we're bombarded with information from the world right now. It's almost like an exhaustion of like, oh, now I have to follow this thing or this thing. And we forget to, not to generalize, but I've seen that oftentimes people forget to check in and to see by reflecting on if it has impacted them, as opposed to just like keep moving through life, keep moving through life, keep going to the next thing. And what did you learn? That's all integration. Even when people lay down at the end of class or at the end of yoga class in Shavasana and somebody's like, I'm out of here. That's the time when that's all that yin energy of the deep integrative work where you go through an experience and then you allow your body to receive the information from it. But if we're just popping into the next wave of information without allowing it to digest and to be embodied, then we're just, in the hamster wheel Tetris game of like, what's now?
I think it's all really important to hear you describe it. And that's why I didn't interject, because you're talking about so many different concepts and philosophies and modalities and therapies in many ways that A, as we talked about, being ahead of the curve, but B, that if anybody were to, I think, sit down and try to maybe seek those out or make sense of them, or, hey, should I try this? And maybe find an instructor for that, or find a group that meets on this, like they probably wouldn't ever get there, or it would take a long time. It would be difficult. And maybe they would be off put by how it's presented or any number of things. But combining it all in this package in a way that you kind of have to trust your intuition and say, like, I can make it fit. I can make it accessible. I can potentially not even really explain it or articulate it, just present it. And then somebody walks out of that saying, like, and I understand why you say like people can't describe. It's like, what just happened? I know something happened, something good happened. So the question is like, how much of that are you thinking, hey, how do I infuse this all in here? How do I make it work? How do I kind of slip it in there? Are you going through that process, or are you just saying like, hey, this feels right, therefore that's how it's going to show up in the class?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it's an ongoing process, because my brain I feel things in a way that I've realized in life. I feel everything in my body. I'm very sensory, and who knows if it's my DNA or my astrology chart or my history. I'm sure a fusion of all of that. But what I've learned by doing and having enough history behind the method and doing it for as long as I have is that I don't ever think I have it figured out. I'm never at a point where I'm saying, oh, I did it. I found it. Because I think that that's when people get stunted in their own growth. When you create something, if you're unable to let go of what you created to create again, you're now in some sort of a structure that becomes a bit stuck. For me, I know that's like a, a kind of expansive way to summarize it. But if I created the class and I said to myself, this class has to work, and it has to work because I need to know what it needs to have, and I need to know what I need to do next, I don't think I would ever be in a space where I'm able to find that information. Because for me, it's through my quiet time, it's through class. The other piece of class, which we don't say because it can be polarizing, I don't belong to a organized religion. My mom, I grew up, she was practicing Buddhism. My dad, all sorts of different types of behaviors in the house. So there was never any like, believe this, study this. But I do know the feeling of when somebody is trying to get you to do what they want to do and then telling you that you can do whatever you want, right? There's this weird exchange in it. Oh, it's actually like you can do whatever you want, but squat more, So I'm using that in the context of the class, because the reason why, and we can go into this in a moment, I created a digital platform in 2019. I did a seed round and built the team. We dealt with music rights and all of this. And then we launched it 3 months before the pandemic. So we were ready to go. The reason why I did digital is because during the period of time when the class was literally, we didn't have marketing until the end of 2020. It was all word of mouth for those first couple years because it was exactly what you said. How do you describe it? I would say, I teach this thing. Do you want to come? Well, what is it? It's really hard to describe. You should just come. Well, I'm not going to come then. And I'd be like, okay. It's not like, oh, you're out, you're in. It's that if somebody has a certain level of open-mindedness and that their own place in their evolutionary journey, people will likely come. Doesn't mean it works for everybody or everybody likes it, but there's a level of like, okay, I'll try, right? So we did the digital product because during that period of time, people were really into building brick and mortars, taking an investment to scale. What I'd found is that it's much harder to teach a class teacher to teach the class, mostly because what has been in the world of fitness for so long, which is a beautiful method of the teacher comes in with their personality and they somewhat entertain you for a bit and they bring you through a series of movements and you enjoy that person and you enjoy that teacher and you enjoy the workout. Now, I'm not generalizing at all. There's many different varieties of styles of teachers, but what I found is that when teachers would come in or people would come in and take the class, they would say, I would love to teach. And then we would bring people through teacher training. And the nuance of the class is that it's not the teacher telling you what to do. And this goes back to me feeling that feeling of like, you can do whatever you want, but do what I'm saying. It's a level of trust. Is that oftentimes when one is teaching the class, the teacher could get into a warp of, do these people like me? Did I say the right thing? Oh, I need to say something inspirational now, or I need to say something a little bit more preachy, which is not the core of the class. The core of the class is use the system of the movements of all these different ways of using breath work and quiet and all of this. And then after these big expression moments, it's self-inquiry. The teacher invites the student to say, what came up? What is top of mind? Can you breathe into that? Can you exhale, let it go, pause, notice what else comes in its place? So it's helping the student to realize through themselves as opposed to the teacher telling you what to do. And now it's tricky because I love all the teachers that have always stepped through the class and everybody has their own style. But I think what happens with that is that the student then gets attached to the teacher, believing that it's the teacher that made them realize. And when it's taught in this other way, it's the teacher holding the space for one to self-realize. So it's so nuanced, but I feel it's more potent and it's more embodied for the student. So that's why we did digital, because we could get the method out there to more people, but still keep it in integrity of the teaching. And then the pandemic happened and it was just, we streamed to 75 countries all over the world. Now I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. It feels like it was yesterday, but it's two decades ago in a way.
This episode of the Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM makes some of the most innovative strength training machines on the market, but that's only one part of their integrated ecosystem. With connected fitness equipment, AI-powered gym software, and a comprehensive corporate wellness offering, it's forging the future of preventative health. Partnering with companies worldwide, EGYM's WellPass program improves employee health by expanding access to premier fitness and health facilities. Upgrading gym floors, EGYM equips every operator with smart equipment and AI tools to create hyper-personalized training plans for every exerciser. Putting it all together, they're transforming healthcare through exercise. Experience the power of EGYM's ecosystem at egym.com. Everything that you're saying is like this somewhat like tension or just, there are two different ways of doing things that like trying to fit this methodology into the kind of fitness, boutique fitness kind of cookie cutter, it just doesn't line up. And there's so many things you're saying, whereas that is, hey, how can we make everything from the footprint to the experience to the utilization of a class the same everywhere? So we know that if we turn this crank, we get the same thing everywhere and we can do X number of studios with X number of people, members coming through the doors. And what you're saying is, no, this is a individual personalized experience that is done a very specific way. And in fact, a way that's constantly evolving. We can't even put it on paper today to tell somebody necessarily how to do it tomorrow, which then creates, like you said, hey, how do we create a brand around this? And do I really want to be the kind of front person who's doing all of this? And then what does that look like as we think about scaling it? How has that evolved in like the digital platform? And then how you think about it today and even going forward? Like, how do you, rectify some of those things?
Yeah, you ask the question, right? And you're honest with yourself and you're honest with the people around you and you have to gut check, right? Is this something that actually feels like when I go and lay my head down at night, I feel good about? Okay, no. Let's wake up the next morning and have a conversation and see if there's an in between. And I think that that's the core piece of the class is that when I first started it, it was just lowercase font and typewriter with a period at the end that said the class, Peace Through Strength. And I've had many different iterations of business within the leadership in the class. And uh, there was a team that, or a few people that came in at one point and were very clear that it needed to have my name on it. And that was the piece that I was like, I do not want to put my name on it. I don't believe this is about me. I believe that I can teach the methodology to people and I want it to live on way past me. And I don't want to be in the public eye and I don't enjoy it. And I don't get the feedback loop that maybe some others feel. That's positive to me, quite the opposite sometimes, but that's my own healing and my own work to feel my sense of being comfortable with who I am, which has happened through the class. And then, so it became the class by Taryn Toomey and everything was by Taryn Toomey. It was like the heirloom, the retreat. I started the retreats in 2012. And then we started doing all these different expressions of the method and everything had my name on it. And I knew that we could do it for a period of time as long as we could take it off after a while, because what was happening, oh, you should come to this class with me. What class? Oh, it's called the class. But what class? Like it should have been like a joke on social media or something at this point. Like it was the rinse repeat. So I understood that it gave it some like legs and like roots, but it didn't feel good to me. But I do think that it did the thing it needed to do. So that's that like polarities of like, do I necessarily want to do it? Will it impact it in a way that helps to understand it? It's safe to try and it's also safe to pull out. And then in 2020, we just made it the class and took my name off of it. Um, and I stepped out of leadership in 2021 when I did the seed round. My lead investor had said, I'll lead you around as long as you make yourself CEO. And I'm like, I'm not a CEO in that way, but sure, I can do whatever it is that I need to do. And I hired a team and my COO was kind of like almost my ghost CEO. You know, I could consult with him and he had he was comfortable with all of that. And he built the digital app and the platform and all of that. And then I stepped out and put two people in the CEO seat. And it's my business, so it's not like I stepped out and gave my business to someone, but I stepped out of the copy, the visual footprint, the photo shoots, doing the photo shoots, not being in them, and all of the visual idea of the brand, because the energy was that it's too far out there. I'm too far out there. Nobody understands what the heck I'm saying. And we need to simplify it for the customer to be able to get more customers in the door. I've heard this story so many times now, right? The founder's the crazy one, and we need to get the founder kind of in the sidecar. And what happened is that our operating expenses went way up and our business started shrinking year after year and it didn't work. But the brand went into this to me, what happened is, and I'm not saying that that was because I wasn't there, but there was a direction that could potentially help other founders or people growing business that I think is an inflection point often. Can this exist without you? Can we package it in a different way? And will that grow the business? And what I think happened is that we packaged it in a way that made more sense to people. There was a period of time on the website, if I recall correctly, that said a blend of dance, cardio, and Pilates to help you feel better. And it summarizes it. It was like, oh, okay. And me, they're like, what's the class? I'm like, oh, like it's connection to like, oh, and I say it with a light heart, but I get way too in there because there's so many pieces of it and it matters to me. But you should be able to soundbite it. And I never could. So that's the direction we went. And I was completely out of the visual and kind of like more staged photo shoots and stuff like that. And it was about 2 years. And I finally just wasn't feeling well inside myself. And I realized that what happens sometimes, I was feeling depressed, I was isolating, I was like, I don't want to be in this place anymore. And it's my like kind of third child. And I finally started speaking about it. And I started saying, I really think I need to like come, back into the business. And everything kind of shifted after those few conversations. And I have a new CEO in place now. It's just one person. And I feel like it's just a new phase of business. I don't think anything that happened was wrong. I think there's so many learnings in it all. I think there's so much about staying in relationship with people, even when you have a break, business or otherwise. And that doesn't mean that there's not a period of time where you should give each other space and separate and do your own work. But my hope with the class is always that anybody that walks through it is impacted by it in a positive way and can say, like, that was an amazing time. Whether or not it was like all good or all bad, right? It was just an experience. So I share that because I'm sensitive about sharing that story as if like something was really wrong. And it wasn't. It was that we tried something. And I think that when you try something, if you yourself start to feel like something's off, that it's good to sit with that feeling and sort out if that's something that's going on inside you or something that needs to be had as a conversation with your team, and to trust your team. And I think that trust is not necessarily something that is a fixed energy. Trust needs to be communicated, and sometimes that the cycles of these things need to be reevaluated because expectations are not clear or there's not conversations being had, and then you start to lose trust, but it's just because you haven't had a conversation. So I came back in last year. I have a new CEO in place. It's been a real crazy year of transition because what I've learned is that people get very comfortable with a certain way. And what the class really is about is understanding that life is going to consistently change. And if you just fall into, operating every day and day out of kind of like grinding through it, the chances of something coming up and happening, I call them divine interventions, but that's the whole other piece of class where I feel like really does connect you to a different space of listening. Something will likely come in and tell you like nudge, nudge, like take you a little bit off. And I feel like that's what's been happening within the class in the past years, that this thing came in and shifted and everybody got a little bit like, oh my God. And that's exactly what the class teaches you to do. How am I aware that I'm actively in a place of discomfort, using choice to stay because I know that I can learn, and then it ends. How do I embody the wisdoms? And that's what we're doing in class, but we're using the physical body, repeating that leg move for 8 minutes straight. And you're like, I can't, I can. Okay, it's a mindset shift. It's a mindset shift. Okay, what does the mindset shift feel like? Now, what if I use sound? And then it's over, and you're like, holy shit, now I'm stronger. Right. So it's like, it's a crazy thing of the company and the class and the whole community of it is like it's all like this holistic wild experience that the workout provides you the tools to do it, but then you have them in your body. It's a ride for sure. And it's fun.
As you're explaining that, there probably is a world in which in a version of the thing that more or less worked, in the other way, whatever that way was going to be, where it was a little bit more consumable, digestible, that people saw it and got it and it just kind of operated. But then there is the other side of that, which, you know, that wouldn't be true to you, that would kind of lack the innovation, if you want to call it that, or just the desire to continue to improve this thing and infuse it with what you believe to be new and beneficial and actually helping people. And so, again, back to that tension that we keep talking about. So it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I don't feel comfortable doing that. And now it's like, okay, how do we probably strike a balance between those two things? Maybe make it more consumable, or at least in a way that people can, once they discover it or they gravitate towards it, like there's something for them to engage with, and you're doing that part, and then the business is growing. And so kind of both needs are being met in a way. Is that going to continue to show up purely digital? There's a lot of things from not just studios, but you mentioned retreats at one point, events, experiences, a lot of things that you could do. Oh, by the way, it is a lot of pressure, especially when you were talking about having your name attached to it. The one thing I was thinking about is that, just like anything, if you're talking about a business or a consulting firm or whatever, you put your name on it. It's like people think they're getting you. They show up and it's like, you need to be there, or I want to talk to Taryn. It's like, well, that's a lot, not only day to day, but showing up in that moment. So what will the kind of offering platform look like going forward? Or maybe you're still figuring that out.
What I think any transition does is it brings a new set of eyes that can see some of the things that maybe you've just been in, like, this is working, this is working, this is not working. And to test and iterate quickly is really great for companies, especially when you're still small. But my new CEO, her name is Lauren, she said to me, yeah, you are a total founder. You're creative and volcanic and fiery, but you're incredibly self-aware, and you catch yourself and you say, maybe this is my stuff, or I'm open to feedback, right? So there's this style of communication that I think comes within having that. I'm coming back to, I share that because of the point of tension. I really believe tension is a very important quality. It's like any sort of square, even if you're talking about, I love astrology and have for like 30 years. So I'm always like using it as a way to create this. It's the same impact that goes on in one's own evolutionary journey in so many different buckets. But it's like when something goes retrograde, or somebody's talking about Mercury retrograde, which we hear all the time, it's that something, it's nothing, a planet never goes backwards. It's just that it's so far away from us that it looks like it's going backwards because it's so slow. So the communication is really hard. And in retrograde periods, also periods of tension within your own inner world, as well as in business and relationship, those are the moments to review. So when something is really tense, beautiful. Now you have something, because you have your awareness and your tools, something's tense. How do I become really present with what the energy is? Move into thoughtful communication, wise mind, as opposed to reacting or emotional mind, and all these different styles that we burn our own house down without even, or just throw, you know, our toys out of the crib and then later feel shame about our own action, and now we're in our own warp. That the tension, when you can feel the tension, to use it, know that that's like a retrograde, the tension. And when the tension becomes too much, and that's, the pop or the explosion, or like, I don't want to do this anymore, you reflect on that and you learn, that's my limit, that's what I need to know next time. And now we're in the evolutionary process. So I think that the future of the class, though, in the past year, what we've done is we've really scanned the app. What we did during the pandemic, it was a live class every hour on the hour. We had remote studios going all over. We had a ton of video on demand content, but we found that users really enjoyed the live stream classes because they could stream into the New York or LA studio, see humans in it after people came back after being in lockdown. And then we started to study the data around that. We realized that from 90% live stream and 10% VOD, video on demand, it started shifting, and they were going back to work in their life. So we needed to shift that balance as well, which is a lot of what we've done in the past year, is to really go out there to our customers and ask them what it is they're using, and then use all of the data that we were gathering and study it, because we had so much, but we weren't necessarily learning from it. And what we found is that it's really quality over quantity, and that the pieces of content that are on the app now will be something that have a vetting process of like, what did this feel like, and how do we use the proper naming device? So when the student goes into the app, it's not just this. Right now, we're launching there'll be a new interface in March that we've been building that'll just be much clearer, much easier to understand, and be able to guide you into, do you need a class to kick your butt today? Do you need a class to soothe your heart, and get a little bit clearer with the naming devices so it's easier? And then create a different onboarding series for people, because I think what happens with an app, if you're not taught how to use it or understand, for me, the original app was supposed to be to get people to bring the class into their home. So there was a zip code finder I wanted to do in there, and you put other people's zip codes in there, and you find out who's doing the class in your neighborhood, and then you meet them for coffee or whatever it is, because the app and the community of the class, or the class, is a huge community connector tool. There's so many people that I've met on retreats, that have met in the studio, that have created businesses together, and like, it's just a great group of like-minded people in the way of like, what else, and expansiveness and compassion, and a little bit wild. So the the app is getting simplified. The retreats, we're actually scaling back on the retreats right now, just to focus our resources on understanding how to create a little bit more of the community piece that we've been craving and wanting to do pre-pandemic. So the new eyes in the business have been helpful because we can get back to a little bit of the original intention. I think the pandemic was so like, holy smokes, because we had it ready, that we were still in the system of doing the same thing. And now it's just like reorganizing and figuring out. I'm very much like a hybrid girl in general. I like to be able to do my workouts at home, but I like to be in community, but I like both things. So to teach people, you have 6 friends and you go to your apartment or your home and you set up 6 mats and you heat the room and you use the rules of class, which are please don't talk to your neighbor and don't touch them. Then the main overarching theme is to take responsibility for the energy you bring into a space. It's a great rule of life, and check yourself and understand that you are, an energetic human that's creating cause and response sometimes, and stream with your friends. You build your own at-home studio. And then you live somewhere where you don't have a studio and you have that. So I really want to get back to that. And I have had a lot of pushback from people like, that's not going to work. You can't get people together, but I believe it can. We're just redirecting our focus and seeing if we can get back to some of the other nuggets that we originally planned.
I think that's right. That, you have that founder spirit, energy, vision to bring this thing into the world, and it be you want it to reach that potential, like what you see it being. And I think that's pretty clear at this point. Going back to the even origin story, we were like, I taught this thing, it didn't have a name. I didn't even know what it was. And I was doing it for a lot of different reasons and maybe didn't even want to turn it into a business. But, at this point, like, do you have a sense of what do you want it to be? What would quote unquote success look like, or an end point, or even a place where you would be able to look at and be like, yeah, like I'm happy, fulfilled, excited, like whatever that word is for you and the class?
I just want it to live on way, way past me. So I want to figure out a way to get it in. I mean, the easiest way would be to write a book, not about me, but a very systematic approach to what we're doing, and to create a program where people can learn about it and carry it on. And I think the more people that we can get moving this way, the more connected they are to themselves and their own heart. And then they treat themselves better, and then they treat everyone around them better. And that's how you create global change, at least in the way of people that show up and are able to do the movement. So I think figuring out how to get that in a way that can live on, from if I decide that I don't want to ever teach again, or I want to teach until, I die, which could be tomorrow. I just have always said that. I've always wanted it to not be about me and to live on beyond me. And I think that I've gotten to a point where I'm so clear about the method. I've done so much of my own work through my own personal life that I know what's going on in the class. And I think, to your point earlier, that it's becoming much more mainstream now, all the things that we're doing. So it's only made me feel clearer about trusting my gut and my instinct. And I think the next piece would be to figure out how to get it in a place where anybody can digest it and move and learn from it as they will. So
For anyone that wants to check it out, follow along, see the new kind of app and platform updates, website, social, where would you point them?
theclass.com.
Easy enough.
I got that URL a year into it for $7,000 from a guy in Florida. I was like, I'm going to buy this thing. Yeah, theclass.com is where the class is. My name is Taryn Toomey. I'm on social, but not much, pop up here and there. Yeah, and we have a studio in New York and LA, and we do retreats. We have one upcoming this summer in Ibiza, and then we haven't launched yet, but we have one in Peru that'll be really special down in October, Lake Titicaca. Yeah, theclass.com. We have a newsletter too if you want to sign up, get little hits every couple weeks and know what we're up to. But yeah.
Perfect. We'll include all the information, make it really easy to find. But more than that, just super grateful for the time. I really enjoy the conversation. So thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I did as well.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you got value from the conversation, please consider subscribing and sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It's a massive help. And if you want more content like this, including news and insights on the latest industry developments, subscribe to the Fitt Insider newsletter at insider.fit.co. And one more thing, you can learn more about our recruiting and consulting services at fit.co. That's FITT.co. I'll see you here next week.